my name is Jenna and welcome to another edition of Reading My Old Fanfictions. This is the fourth video that I have done. They don't get particularly good engagement or anything, but honestly I find them really enjoyable to film, so we're just gonna do another one. Unsurprisingly, we're probably going to be reading a Harry Potter fanfiction because that seems to be who I was in my late high school years. I mean, I still am now, but it seemed worse back then. Let's find me. I recently changed my name on here, which it's not much better than what it originally was, but like what it originally was shocking. Oh, I still have a poll on here asking people what story they want me to update next. And one person has voted. Sorry, don't think that's getting updated anytime soon. Okay, what is it we've read? We would have read Her Heart, His Love, As Dust Settles, Always. Looks like we were up to A Tale of Love. So we read the story Good Morning, and now we're going to read the story Beautiful. Okay, this is gonna be a Ron Hermione story, and we're just gonna jump right in. Ron sighed as he stared hard at his reflection in the dusty mirror. His hair seemed to have grown wild overnight. He tried every spell he could think of, but nothing seemed to make his hair stay flat. Giving it up as a bad job, he straightened his robes and looked at the watch he'd gotten for his 17th birthday. She would be here in about an hour. At a loss for something better to do, Ron began pacing back and forth across his room. As he paced, he allowed his thoughts to wander. Unsurprisingly, he found his thoughts wandering to Hermione, the girl of his dreams. Oh, bless. Smiling slightly, Ron thought about the day he'd asked her out for their first date. She had been out in the garden. A book lay open across her lap. Once again, I was apparently really good at semicolons when I was in high school, because that semicolon is in the exact correct place and I can't do that anymore. I don't know what happened to me. Apparently uni has like made my writing ability just stumble because I no longer cared. She had decided to return to Hogwarts to continue her education. Ron had laughed when he first heard, but he knew Hermione needed to complete her schooling for her to be happy. Look, can't relate, Hermione. I struggled hardcore to finish uni, so can't relate. He remembered how the sun had reflected golden rays off her hair. Her eyes seemed to sparkle as she gazed up at him with a questioning look on her face. He had sat down next to her and removed the book from her lap. Is this a proposal or a first date ask? Like, I'm getting concerned. She had begun to protest, but he had raised a finger to her lips. He loved her and he wanted to do this right. Leaning in, his lips met hers and they kissed passionately. This is actually making me uncomfortable, wow. Breaking away, he had asked her on a picnic tea, but he hadn't told her where they were going. Smiling, she had agreed and he had left her to do her studying in peace. Okay, I have questions. First question is, what garden are we talking about? Were they living together? Was Hermione at Ron's house? Like, what is happening? Why were they together? I have questions. A knock at the door pulled Ron from his reminiscing. He opened it and revealed Ginny, who was standing with him. Oh god, what happened? Oh no! Whoops. Accidentally clicked on an ad. Whoops, let's just go back a minute. Where were we up to? A knock at the door pulled Ron from his reminiscing. He opened it and revealed Ginny, who was standing with her hands on her hips. What do you want? For you to stop pacing, she said as she glared at him. It's driving me insane. Ginny entered the room and Ron closed the door behind her. Sorry, Ginny, I was just thinking about Hermione. Ginny's tone had changed. She no longer sounded angry, but curious. Ron looked at his foot awkwardly before replying. Yeah, maybe. Why? Ginny clapped her hands together happily. Oh, you guys are just so cute together. I cannot see Ginny saying that, ever. Ron looked at his little sister with a look of bewilderment on his face. Out, he said, pointing towards the door. Have you kissed her yet? Ginny asked mockingly as Ron began shepherding her out of the room. Out. I mean, she began as she stopped in the doorway, apart from in the room of requirement and in the garden and that time that you get out. Ron gave Ginny a shove and slammed the door closed behind her. Fuming, he resumed his pacing, more to annoy Ginny than anything else. A second knock at his door sounded. Assuming it was Ginny, Ron stormed over to it and wrenched it open. What? He bellowed. As soon as the word was out of his mouth, he regretted it, for it was not Ginny standing at the door. Instead, Ron had opened the door to reveal Hermione, who was standing with her mouth slightly open, shocked at the hello he'd given her. Honestly, I feel like Hermione would not be shocked by that. That seems like the exact sort of thing Ron would do. Embarrassed, Ron began to mumble an excuse, not really sure what he was saying. Should I come back later, Ron? Asked Hermione with that same look of shock on her face. No, said Ron quickly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for... Hermione held up her hand, indicating that she wanted him to stop talking. I mean, would you like me to come back in 5 minutes so we can start the date over? She asked as a small smile crept onto her face. I'd like that, he replied as he mirrored her smile. Hermione turned and began to walk down the winding stairs of the burrow. She could faintly hear a click as Ron's bedroom door closed. Typical Typical Ron, she thought as she made her way to the sitting room, and he would let Ginny get the best of him. Has Hermione just sort of been here this whole time? Who let her in? Was it Mrs. Weasley? Was it Ginny? Like, who? How? Why? When? What? So done. Hermione sat on one of the weathered couches and waited patiently for the 5 minutes to be up. As she waited, she absent-mindedly curled a strand of her hair on her fingers, her thoughts on Ron and where he was taking her on their date. She thought back to when he had asked her to dinner. No, he asked you on a picnic tea. This is like 2 paragraphs later. How did I already get this wrong? Oh, and now we're reminiscing again. She had been studying in the garden and he had come out to meet her. But which garden? Why do you live together? I have so many questions. She remembered how nervous he looked as he had sat down next to her, clearly debating in his mind what to do next. He had kissed her fondly. The taste of his lips lingered on hers for hours afterwards before asking her on their first date. She had agreed immediately, even though he wouldn't reveal where they were going. As Hermione smiled at the memory, she realized the 5 minutes were up. Slowly, she rose from the couch and made her way back up the stairs to Ron's attic bedroom. She knocked on the door and waited. After a few moments, the door opened, revealing Ron's freckly face and broad grin. Hermione returned his smile as he offered her his arm and led her down the stairs. Once outside, Hermione started to ask where they were going. Ron shook his head. It's a secret. We just have to get past the gate so we can apparate. Frowning slightly, Hermione allowed herself to be guided by Ron to the spot they would be apparating. Here we are, Ron announced happily. He turned to her with a mischievous grin. Close your eyes. Why? Asked Hermione suspiciously. Don't you trust me? Of course I trust you, Ron, but then close your eyes. It's okay. I've got you. Hermione took a second to glare at him before closing her eyes. She felt Ron's hand close into hers, and then suddenly they were swept into the uncomfortable sensation of being squeezed through a tube. The feeling stopped as suddenly as it had started, and Hermione attempted to open her eyes. Nope! Ron's hand closed over her eyes, keeping them shut. No peeking till I say so. Hermione said nothing but kept her eyes closed. Using her other senses, she attempted to figure out where they were. She could hear birds in the distance and feel something soft under her feet. The sun shone gloriously onto her face and a light breeze whipped through the air. Even without seeing, Hermione knew that Ron had taken her to a beautiful place. Okay, Ron began as he took her hand in his. Open your eyes. Hermione opened them and a small gasp escaped her lips. She was standing with her back to a forest. In front of her was a beach with white sand and a bright blue ocean. The beach stretched on for miles and Hermione felt a sudden urge to dip her toes into the water. She must have moved forward a few steps without realizing its sand began to roll over her toes. But I thought, is she not wearing shoes? Like, confusion. Not yet, we'll go to the beach later. There's somewhere I want to go first. Ron's voice sounded distant. Hermione turned and was shocked to see him standing meters behind her. She hadn't even realized she'd let go of his hand. She walked towards him and took his hand again. Smiling, he turned and began to lead her into the forest. It was only a short time before they came to a clearing. In the clearing was a rug and pillows as well as a picnic basket full with what Hermione was sure was Mrs. Weasley's cooking. Oh, Ron, whispered Hermione, shook in the beauty around her. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, said Ron. Just sit and enjoy it. He led her to the rug where they had sat down together. Hermione kicked off her shoes and tucked her feet under her, so she was wearing shoes. Good to know. She thought Ron was going to open the picnic basket, but instead he produced a single flower which he placed in her hair. Hermione took the opportunity to kiss him gently. It was a lingering kiss and Hermione wished it could last a lifetime, however oxygen was necessary and after a few moments Ron broke off to serve about the food. For half an hour, they sat and munched on Mrs. Weasley's excellent cooking. They sat together and Ron's eyes never left Hermione. When they had both eaten as much as they could, they lay down next to each other, Hermione's head resting on Ron's chest. They lay in silence, listening to the sounds of the forest around them. Hermione began to feel sleepy. She was about to doze off when Ron spoke. What are you thinking about? Hermione smiled. It was such an innocent question. She loved how Ron could sometimes be so clueless. I'm thinking about how beautiful this place is. It's so quiet and peaceful. She felt Ron shift slightly under her as he went to scratch his chin. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking how you are the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. This place is nothing compared to the beauty of the girl lying alongside me. I love Ron and Hermione as a couple. I think they're great. I do think they have problems that they would probably need a counselor to help them work through. But none of this would ever happen. This is not who Ron and Hermione are as people, and it makes me uncomfortable to read. Hermione felt tears creeping into her eyes. She refused to cry though. This was her first date with the boy she loved. She didn't want it to end in her tears. Come on, Ron said suddenly, getting to his feet. Where are we going? It's almost sunset. He refused to say anything more and offered her his hand. She reached for her shoes, but Ron shook his head. I'll carry them, he said softly. An idea of what they were about to do crept into her mind. She handed Ron her shoes and allowed him to pull her to her feet. Wordlessly, he began to guide her in the direction of the beach. Hermione smelt the salty air before she saw it. When the ocean came into view, she couldn't help but gasp once again at its beauty. She had never seen anything to compare it with. The sand felt hot under her bare feet and she began to ask Ron if they could walk in the ocean. Before she could finish the sentence though, he had picked her up and begun to run with her into the sea. A second too late, she realised what he was about to do. Can I just say, clearly they're not anywhere in England because the beaches in England are nothing like this, which is amusing. No, Ron, the rest of her words were lost as he dumped her into the ocean. Okay, see, that sounds more like something Ron would do. Standing up, Hermione pounced on him and pulled him backwards, causing them both to fall into the water. He splashed splashed her playfully and she splashed back. As the sun began to set, they made their way back to shore. Once out of the water, Hermione pulled out her wand and they were instantly dry. Thanks, said Ron as he shook his now dry hair. Any time. Ron took her hand gingerly and pulled her close. Bending down, he cupped her chin in his hands and tilted her head up towards him. Hermione stood on her toes and her lips met his, closing the gap between them. They kissed as the waves crashed around their feet and the sunset on the horizon. Wow. When they broke apart, they were smiling. Ron put his lips to his ear and whispered the words she had wanted to hear. I love you. Hermione looked up and locked onto his eyes. I love you too. I have many concerns with that. So number one, they were clearly not on an English beach because that's not what English beaches look like. Number two, that's not Hermione and Ron, like at all. And number three, I'm sorry, they kissed with the waves crashing around them and the sunset on the horizon. Like, could I have been more cliche and awful? Maybe this is the reason why I just can't stand contemporary novels anymore, because I just ruined it for myself when I wrote fanfiction. To be fair, it's possible because that was awful to read. The prose was alright, but the content was awful. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of this fanfiction. I guess I would like to know. I simultaneously feel like these fanfictions are getting worse and also getting better with every video that we do. Like, I clearly have improved writing-wise, but content-wise, it just makes me want to vomit because it's so cutesy and adorable, and that's not who I am. Like, where's the murder? Where's the darkness? Where's the badness? Like, yeah. Clearly, I think that was in 2011, so that was when I was 16. So clearly 16-year-old me and 25-year-old me, we don't like the same thing. If you like this video, be sure to give it a huge thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. Stay random. Bye.